Welcome to the Embracing Neurodiversity podcast, where I share my journey of embracing the experience of my amazing son who is on the spectrum. I am Ivory, a mother, educator, and personal growth enthusiast. My goal is to offer insight and stories that may inspire you on your own parenting journey. Thank you. Welcome to the Embracing Neurodiversity podcast. I'm Ivory. I am your host. I am the founder of Embracing Neurodiversity. So today's episode is going to be a little bit more personal as it relates to me and my story. You all know that I'm not really someone who I like to talk about the work. I like to talk about advocacy. I like to talk about my experience raising my child who is on the autism spectrum, particularly through the lens of education, right? Because I am an educator. And I like to talk in a way that is educational and empowering. But I do understand that we are all human beings and we all come to this work and parenting. When I say this work, it encompasses a bunch of things, right? It means like parenting neurodiverse children. It means educating neurodiverse children. It means advocating. It means self-care. It means unpacking maybe some of the behaviors and mindsets that don't work for you anymore and learning new ones. It means all of that. That's what the work is, right? And so I usually like to approach all of that through a lens of education and empowerment. However, I do know and understand that our personal stories and stories are at the core of how we relate and understand each other and ourselves, right? And so I wanted to take some time out today in this podcast episode to talk about reading. Now, that may sound, obviously, it probably is a little bit nerdy because, like, I like to learn, I like to read, I like to consume information, I like to make connection. That's who I am, it's who I've always been. But this is not about reading literally, it is about my story of how reading saved my life, really. And the reason why I want to talk about that is because in the work that I do around how to support neurodiverse learners, I talk a lot about the importance of creating accommodations for your children and your students. I talk a lot about making sure that the curriculum reflects who they are, right? That's what culturally responsiveness means. It really just truly means you should see yourself showing up in the content in the curriculum that you're engaging in, because scientifically you learn best when you can make a connection quicker, and you can make a connection quicker when you can relate to the content and when you see yourself in the content. And so because I'm incredibly passionate about those things, because I know from my own lived experience as a little girl reading books in the housing projects in Kansas City, that reading literature and books that of people that looked like me, and even those that didn't, stories that shaped mine, but stories that didn't shape mine but had a little bit of relatability, that was the thing that completely shifted my journey in life. First, it changed my perspective. It helped me to see the world outside of the one that was in front of me, right? So it grew my imagination. And when my imagination grew, what ended up happening with it, I was able to begin dreaming about what was possible for myself outside of my current environment as a child, as a teen. That's number two, which was incredibly important. And then the third thing that reading did for me was providing me with the vocabulary and the intellect to be able to move forward and access the things that I dreamed for myself. So knowing that how it worked for me, I'm clear that it works for that formula can work for anyone. Now, I do understand that reading is not everyone's favorite pastime. I understand that it takes a little bit of patience, a willingness to want to sit down and consume information in a an intentional way, and that's not, especially now in society, is not our comfortable way of doing things. We consume information at a very expedient rate nowadays. Our attention span, regardless if you are neurodiverse or not, is like incredibly small because we're able to access information at an expedient rate now. However, you can learn how to read in a multitude of ways, or you can engage in reading. Young people can learn how to read in a multitude of ways now, which I'm going to talk about in upcoming episodes. I'm very excited about. But also, as an adult, you can consume information and listen to literature in a myriad of ways now as well. And there are ways that can fit your lifestyle and your comfort zone. But the bottom line is that, like, engaging in literature that is reflective of you, and those that are not reflective of you, which is also important, which I'll talk about down the road, is essential to ultimately, in my opinion, your liberation, quite frankly, because it changes the way that you think, it changes the way that you see the world, and it changes the way you see yourself, which is why I wrote the children's books. And this is not like about it, like pitching. Really, I want to make the connection, which is why I wrote the children's books, because I wanted young people, particularly neurodiverse kids, particularly kids who are not verbal, which just because you're not verbal or talking all the time does not mean that you cannot read or are incapable of reading, which I'm going to unpack in later episodes as well. But what it does is when you put the literature in front of them, when you put the illustrations in front of them, scientifically, their brain begins to absorb the colors, the numbers, the letters, the words, the context clues, little by little. And there are strategies that you can do to help with increase that over time. They build a healthy level of vocabulary words. They're able to then build on sentences. They're able to then read more fluently. They're able to write more fluently. And then ultimately, for some of our babies, they're able to speak more fluently, right? It's a full circle. But more importantly, they are able to build an imagination in their brain that allows for them to create the life that they want for themselves. That is the bottom line. So the correlation here always and will forever be is that reading changes lives, but reading equals liberation. Reading equals opportunity. Reading equals access. Reading equals advocacy. I can give you 101 ways in which why reading is important. But let me step back because I do want to share a little bit more about me and why I'm passionate about this work, reading in general. So I want to ask you all a question. I'm sure my audience varies, but have you ever found yourself in a place where words were your only comfort or stories were your only safe space? This episode is about that because reading is also about finding relatability, as I've mentioned before. So I think I've shared this with you all that I grew up navigating some very difficult terrain in my childhood, right? And like so many young people who've had my lived experience, when you grow up in a community that is low resourced and your family doesn't have financial means to take care of you fully and healthily, a myriad of things can occur. And when you don't have access to opportunities, a myriad of things can occur. And so as a result, I carried more than I should as a child. I didn't feel seen and I didn't feel heard and I didn't feel safe, quite frankly. But there were always books. Books became my sanctuary. Like literally, I would be closed off in my room reading, and I would literally walk to the library in my neighborhood, which is why I love public libraries to this day. I would literally walk to the public library and go to source more books and check more books out. I would crack open a novel and completely disappear, and the world around me would disappear, which is what I needed at that time. Books like Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison. Honestly, I was really into a lot of urban fiction, which was my thing at the time. Lots of Sister Soldier, lots of Elin Harris, a lot of the books are losing me right now. But I was into all of the books heavily, right? A lot of Danielle Steele, a lot of VC Andrews, like all of that. So anyway, books were my sanctuary, and I would just literally take them. I would take them to school with me. I would take them to church with me. Like, it was my escape. And so reading saved me because it gave me language for feelings that I didn't know how to name. It also gave me stories where young girls like me survived and thrived and found their power, which is how I learned to do the same, or I'm still learning, but like over time, right? Reading also gives you the words to be able to reaffirm yourself, which is what I also want to offer to young children who are neurodiverse through my books and my work. And to parents as well, right? And reading just wasn't my escape. It gave me a framework for self worth. It taught me how to imagine a life beyond survival. I want this for our children and our families. When the world tells you that maybe you're too much, or you're too sensitive, or too emotional, or you don't know enough, or you're just not good enough at all, reading books that reflect your story remind you that you are more than enough. And I cannot stress that enough. Years later, when I became a mother and my son was diagnosed with autism, reading became a guide once again. Like, I turned books like the Conscious Parent book, Neurotribes, Not Normal, and I'm going to list these books as well. The Whole Brain, these books really gave me insight and perspective about not my child's experience, because every child who is neurodiverse and specifically autistic is different. Just like a fingerprint, we all have a different human profile. However, it did give me an understanding of some shared experience of people who are autistic. And it helped me to also make the connection to myself, because we're all connected as human beings. So, what is the lived experience of someone who's autistic? And there are some overlays that perhaps that I can relate to, and how do I lean into that with the relationship with my son? So, it's really helped. Reading books that reflected his experience helped me to see him fully and affirm his brilliance, affirm what I already knew, really, and taught me how to support him and his language and his development. And so, like, access to information, reading is the key. The more I read and the more I continue to read, it inspires me to create as well. And so, all of these years of consuming information and being exposed to information in regards specifically to neurodiversity, and all the years of being an educator and teaching other young people how to read, brought me to this moment. It led me to write the Caleel's Journey children's books. It led me to write the Transformative Parent Playbook. It wasn't born from a theory. Truly, it came from real, raw parenting. It came from real, rigorous teaching that informs my work. I'm on a mission to create literacy programs that can do the same for our children. That's why I created the Caleel's Journeys children's books, a series that centers neurodiverse, brave children of color, identifying, affirming stories. And it's why I built Phonics Flow, a literacy curriculum rooted in the science of reading, designed to be culturally responsive and neurodiverse affirming. Because here's the truth: the literacy crisis is real. The National Assessment of Education scored only 33% of fourth graders in the United States are reading proficiently. That's a little over one third, right? And for students of color, Black students, Latinx students, and students with learning differences, that number, as you can imagine, is lower. This is an academic emergency. We are in an equity crisis. We are in a reading crisis. And we need to do something about it. It's time for us to, as parents, also prioritize literacy in our homes and as educators in creating spaces where the climate is safe and our children feel seen and heard and are regulated to learn to read. If you're listening right now and you're in a hard season, find a story that reminds you of who you are. Let your child see you read. I'm telling you that is key. And I share this story often. My mother, who's passed away, she suffered from addiction throughout my upbringing. But the dichotomy and the irony is that I also saw her reading often. And when I was a child, she would take me to the bookstore and allow me to pick out a book with her. That also changed the trajectory of my life, right? And so children, they do what they see you do. So pick up a book. Find a story that reminds you of who you are. Let your child see you read and allow reading to be your refuge and restoration. If you're looking for tools, community, curriculum that centers your child's needs and their voice, check out Phonics Flow. I put the link below. And check out the Caleel's Journey children's books. They were made from a place of love from one reader, mother, educator to another. So thank you for holding space with me today. This episode, if it moved you at all, please share it with someone else who could use a story to remember to share their own story. Until next time, keep embracing your child's light. And as always, take care of yourself. Bye.